So with inventory performance, I should mention that where we are at in the platform is over here in premium assortment. And we're going to be looking at the three modules that are within this dashboard, or three dashboards that are within the module today. So inventory performance overview, comparison, as well as product details. So inventory performance overview just is a really good baseline, basically, for you to understand what types of inventory are in your store, ones that are overstocked, ones that are understocked, and what your good performers are versus your worst performers or poor performers. So we really like to kind of view this by store. So within the store name, you can select whatever store you want to take a look at, and we can go from there. Category, to just kind of get like a high level overview, we typically leave this blank. Or some people like to just kind of focus on the cannabis related items. So you could do that tooltip with is not, or not is not null, is not, and then we can segment out non-cannabis related items. So you could do that as a category option. Otherwise, it's kind of nice to just get like a full picture of what your categories look like here. I'm not going to refresh because my Wi-Fi is a little slow and I don't want to delay this, but right at the top here, we have store top line overview. So this is going to give you an idea of how many distinct SKUs you have in stock at the moment. So my Emerald Valley Denver location has 2,487 SKUs in stock. This is the revenue that I've brought in. And this is all within the last 60 days. So this specific dashboard is a fixed time frame. So within the last 60 days, this is how much revenue. And then percent of in-stock SKUs without sales for the last 60 days. So if you're looking at this, this is almost 32% of the SKUs that I have that have not had any sales within the last 60 days, which is kind of an alarming number. I'm assuming if I did, filter that out the non-cannabis related items, that might change a little bit, hopefully, but that's still kind of a large chunk of SKUs that you have in stock that are not really doing anything for you in the last 60 days. So that's definitely something to pay attention to for sure. If one of your goals is to kind of reduce or to kind of optimize your shelf space and, make sure that you have a better product assortment that resonates with your customers a little bit better, this would be maybe a number to start tracking. And hopefully this percentage reduces over time the better assortment that you bring in to your store. So that's kind of a benchmark there that we can call out. The next pile next to that is kind of playing off of the Pareto principle. So it's saying the percentage of in-stock SKUs that are making up 80% of your sales. And usually we like to follow the 80-20 rule. And we kind of say that that's a good indication that the retail is going pretty well. So here we have almost 27% of in-stock SKUs making up 80%, which is pretty good. If it was way above that, maybe we would want to definitely take a deeper dive into why that is. But almost 27% of in-stock SKUs making up 80% of sales, and then the rest of those SKUs are making up, that last 20% of sales. So that's kind of a high level overview. Again, something to start benchmarking with if you do want to track this, come back in 30 days, see if anything that we've gone over today and any adjustments that you've made to your inventory has improved your performance. This would be a great place to start. Down here, we have quite a few different tables that we want to call out. The first is store category overview. So this is going to give you an idea of how your categories are performing inventory wise. So you can see a breakdown of each of your categories here. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit because it's a lot of data on one screen. But you can see the store category overview. So how many SKUs you have in terms of beverages, flour, tinctures, vapor, all of your different categories here. So the distinct number of SKUs is going to be what tells you how many. And then you can break it down by also brand and vendor count too. So you can see how many brands are making up this 41 number of distinct SKUs, and what does that mean in terms of vendors as well. We also have revenue, SKU revenue, brand revenue, all that good stuff. So we have lots of information there. The next thing we want to take a look at is the table below it. This is going to be your top 20 SKUs in stock with no sales. So the initial 3 or initial couple are going to be maybe ones that you've gotten in recently to your store that haven't had a chance to sell yet. We noticed that with quite a few things, but maybe like these top 5 or something you just got in and they haven't had a chance to sell. So what we typically recommend is sorting this differently. So click on total quantity on hand and it'll sort from lowest to highest. Once we sort this, this is going to give us a better idea of products that you've had in stock for the last 60 days that maybe are just sitting there. They might be, you know, expired products. They might be, who knows what's going on. You're going to see a lot of ones and maybe like a couple of other numbers over here on the right. But this just means that you have one of each of these SKUs on hand at the moment. So either expired or just didn't sell that well, you know, whatever's happening with that. That's kind of a good way to look at this information. The other thing I will mention that would be probably super helpful is if you go ahead to Tile Actions to the top right and download the data, you can download this into an Excel spreadsheet and you can view all of this information. So you don't have to just look at the top 20. You can slice and dice it however you want, but you can see, you know, how many stocks, how many SKUs you have in stock that do have only 1 on hand, or maybe 5 on hand and they've just been sitting there for a long time and haven't sold in the last 60 days. A tool tip with this is once you click on download, one thing that I do recommend is if you click custom and then just do a lot of rows here to make sure that you're downloading all of the rows instead of just those top 20. So that's one thing to call out there. So that is top 20 SKUs in stock with no sales. The next couple are, I find pretty interesting, the top 20 overstock SKUs. So these are ones that have just not had that many sales, are moving really slowly, and you have a lot on hand of these. And they're definitely ones to consider maybe not restocking in a long time, or maybe not restocking ever again. So the top 20 SKUs, what we're looking at here is in-stock average units per day. If you've been to a couple of these training sessions, you'll probably have heard me talk about this specific unit that we use throughout a lot of our dashboards. And this is the average number of units that you sell in a given day. A lot of these are zeros, but they might be like 0.01 or 0.02, you know, really small numbers. And so obviously you can tell that you're not really using that. You're not really selling as many of those. Total quantity on hand is how many SKUs or how many units you have on hand of these individual SKUs. So it's going to be kind of larger numbers here. And then stock coverage ratio, this whole table is based on the stock coverage ratio for individual products. So if you attended my inventory management training, then you'll have a better idea of what stock coverage ratio is, but it's essentially, you know, how many time or how much time can you cover with the inventory that you have on hand. So that's top 20. Again, you can download this data as well to bring in more results, so you can look at more than the top 20. And then the last thing I want to look at is the top 20 understock SKUs. So these are ones that are doing pretty well. They're selling quite quickly, and you don't have enough of these to meet the next 14 days, the target days, and you're probably going to run out pretty soon. So if we take a look at the first one here, this is a pre-roll. In stock average units, it sells almost 4 units per day. And you only have one on hand. So you definitely can't cover the next 14 days for sure. You would likely want to consider reordering this, especially if it's selling pretty quickly. It has a high sale velocity. Any questions on these 3 tables I went over or the initial information I shared?
No, I was just gonna ask on the when you download the Excel, I've tried to play with some of them and it's probably not this specific one. And I actually you may have already answered it because I didn't go into the customize and do the bunch of them. It just came up with like one number.
Are you saying you use this in Excel, the Excel Connect, or you downloaded it to Excel?
I don't think it was like specifically the SKUs. I think it was a customer report that I was trying to pull.
Okay.
But whenever I download for Excel, it just comes up with like a total number instead of a line by line kind of thing. And that could be because it was a customer instead of this as well. But I also didn't realize there was a drop down where you could customize it. So
Yep.
yeah, you did pretty much already answer that. I think I'm good. I've been rotten everything.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it might just depend on what type of data you're trying to download. Like you said, maybe it did only have like one value associated with it. I've had that happen to me too, but I'll have time after this if you do want to kind of go over that more and we can take a look.
Okay.
Alrighty, so next dashboard down, this is our SKU share and revenue share by inventory grade. So essentially what we're doing here is applying a grade to all of your products. And we're really basing this off of revenue share and basket penetration. So we're kind of categorizing your products into good performers, average performers, and poor performers so that you can better understand how to optimize your shelf space with these better performing products and not have to worry as much about those poor performers or average performers. So this is what we call an ABC XYZ matrix. And this is just kind of a way to categorize and grade those products based on how they're performing at your store. We do have a whole industry report based on how to optimize your shelf space. So I'm happy to send that to you after. It has all of this information on our grading matrix, the ABC XYZ. So with this, it kind of lays out how we're looking at each product. So a good performer in AX is going to be high sales value and high basket penetration. Those are like awesome products. Average is going to be maybe like either high sale value and low basket penetration, low sale value, high basket penetration. So you'll see some products like maybe pre-rolls, for example, they're kind of at a lower price point, but they often have higher basket penetration. So that's something to keep in mind. Like maybe they are actually doing pretty good, but they don't actually bring in that much sales value, which is totally fine. That's like a really good add-on product. Not necessarily going to be a driver product for you, but something to keep in mind. And then you have those higher sales value ones, categories that are going to be good to maybe like pair with those lower priced items that will drive a little bit more high sales value and high basket penetration. So and then low sales value, low basket penetration, those are going to be your poor performers. So again, we're breaking up into good, average, and poor. Over here on the right, we have a couple of like recommendations for each bucket essentially, or for each grade. So good performers, we often say consider stocking more units of these products and increasing the shelf space for them because they are going to be really beneficial for your store. Average performance, not necessarily any action needed or urgent action, I should say. And then poor performers are going to be, you really want to keep an eye on how they're performing and trending. Maybe they are really poor performers just because, you know, your demographic that's coming into your store doesn't necessarily resonate with those products, or maybe you know, there's some bud tender education that needs to happen around those products that will increase the sales of that product and get it into more baskets. There's a lot of different things that can be happening to indicate that it's a poor performer. So we're not saying necessarily to cut it out completely, but understand a little bit more as to why they're performing poorly. So that is a little bit about ABCXYZ. And again, I will send you the industry report after this so that you can read through it. Kayla, I know you're working on optimizing your shelf space right now, so it might be super helpful for you to kind of review.
Absolutely.
One thing, so we have this matrix here, and then the next thing that we can do after we kind of get a good handle on the overview is jumping into inventory comparison. So inventory comparison, this is going to really give you a good idea of how are my products within one category really functioning, and like let's kind of pair out the poor performers versus the really good performers and focus on those. In my previous training on Tuesday, I actually identified a use case where I was overstocked on tinctures. I really wanted to just kind of get some out of my store and be more thoughtful about what I order next time. So I kind of took that theme and ran with it for today's training. So within inventory comparison, again, let's do it by store. I'm going to look at the last 60 days, but you can choose whatever makes sense to you. And then I did add a category here. So I'm going to look at just tinctures. It kind of, if you choose a category, it makes it a little bit easier to kind of read the rest of the data, because if you are, for example, focusing on brands or vendors and you want to make sure you're getting the best bang for your buck with certain brands or vendors, then you can slice it by brand, and it makes it a lot easier to clearly see which tinctures are selling the best under which brands, and let me kind of cultivate the relationship with them so I can kind of build up my inventory that way. That's one way to kind of look at this. So I have all those filters set. We can see our total revenue in the last 60 days. Product count is 34. So we have 34 tincture products, tincture and sublingual products, and average sale per product. So 180 bucks, not bad. Fair share of sales. So fair share of sales is going to identify which products, or which brands I should say, are really making up the largest amount of sales. So this graph here to the left is really saying the same exact thing as this table. I prefer to look at the table just because it's like easier to understand what you're kind of reading, and I'm zooming in way too much. So hold on a second. Okay, so this fair share sales over here to the right, this is going to break it down by brand. I already noticed there's like maybe a little data cleanup. Again, this is a demo system, so not great, but two brands that are probably the same actually and should be lumped together. But in the last 60 days, you can see how much revenue each one of these brands brought in and the product count associated with each of these brands. So Fairwinds, the top one, has 15 products. They're clearly making up the most amount of revenue and clearly have the highest percentage of sales. And then the average revenue per product is also very high. So I would likely assume that Fairwinds is probably the brand that I want to pay most attention to because it is doing pretty well at our store. You can see the rest of these brands. This one, for example, number 3, Series, has 7 products associated with their brand and only makes up 16% of sales. And then there's, you know, a couple others. That's NA, but Green Revolution or Passion Flower only has 2 products and is making up 3.7% of sales, and has a higher average revenue per product. So that's kind of really kind of analytical and a deeper dive into the data, but I find this pretty interesting because it's clear to see like okay, if I'm stocking a lot of any given brand, like there's a clear front runner and then maybe less so of these other ones. So you could probably cut a couple of these brands and still be doing just fine, especially since this top one makes up 63% of your sales. And then all the way to the right is just an index. So the better the product is doing, the greener it's going to be. The worse the product's doing, the redder it's going to be. All right, so that is fair share of sales. And then down here at the very bottom, also kind of interesting. So this is broken up into a brand again, and this is only going to be comparing the same categories against each other. So again, I have tinctures here. We can see per brand, how much percentage do we have of average, good, and poor performers. So if we hover over any one of these different colors, we can see there are 8 products underneath Fairwinds that are good performers, which is awesome. We have 2 products here that are poor performers. We can even click into this bar and show all 2 products and see exactly which products are your poor performers. So once this loads, based on the number of quantity we have on hand, maybe these are ones that we did get in kind of recently and hasn't necessarily had a chance to sell, but if you're closer to your inventory management, you would be able to kind of know that. So for example, if we're talking about the last 60 days and we just got in this Fairwind CBD and they haven't had a chance to sell yet, then it probably will be thrown into the poor performer product. But as time goes by, they might move up to good performer if they sell pretty well. So that's just something to keep in mind there. One thing we can also look at, let's take a look at the average performers and see. So we can see the 2 that make up the average performers here and how many quantity there is on hand. So that's a little bit about the in-stock product grade. You can also click on and off any one of these by clicking the Alt key and clicking the actual word of the grade. So if we only want to look at poor performers, for example, we can click Alt and then click that on. And then likewise, if you want to turn them all back on, that's just a tooltip there. But hopefully this makes sense. You know, you can clearly see what each brand's product mix is made up of in terms of good, average, and poor performers. Same thing down here. This is just a different way of looking at it. In-stock products by grade as a percentage instead of as an actual number of products that you have. Any questions on inventory comparison?
Nope, I think I got it.
Cool. Kayla, is there any specific, since you're the only customer on the line right now, are there any specific like categories or brands, vendors that you are kind of looking to cut from your mix, or are you just kind of getting started with your optimization?
We are just getting started really, but I've already, we have several locations, and so he's kind of, my boss has kind of went ahead and had me start going through my inventory. This would have been great last week because I started sending back things that I know just don't move in my store.
Yeah.
And then to some of our other stores that can move them because we're so spread out, we all have completely different demographics.
Right, that makes a lot of sense.
So we've been trying to do that here lately, and I think after we're done, I'm probably gonna dive deeper with this. I can, now that I know how to do it, and then I can really start cleaning up my shelves because our store is performing pretty well in comparison to several other dispensaries here in this town, and so I want us to keep doing well. I don't want us to go back down or anything because we've been open a year this month. So I really just want to keep driving people in and making sure that I have the right products on my shelves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ultimately, flour is our top seller. Flour and edibles, I feel like, are what we're starting to move more. The oils and tinctures, like you were saying, in the capsules, stuff like that. It just sits there because, for one, I feel like that's partially on me because I haven't trained my bud tenders well enough to push those kinds of products. But also, I feel
Yeah.
like the market in this area, if you try and explain to someone that a capsule is just infused coconut oil that's put in something so it's easier for you to take than a tincture, they feel like they're taking pills again. And
Yeah. Yeah.
people feel
Hey,
they're trying to get away from that.
Kayla, do you happen to have access to retailer premium marketing?
I believe we do. Give me
Okay.
just 1 second. I have a customer right quick.
Yep. Do you mind real quick, Amelia, while she's with a customer, can you pull up the product purchasing behavior section on the customer analysis?
Yeah.
So I think this is a really great place to, if they're if they're not selling tinctures, it's like, let's find out what type of customer we should be trying to pitch to.
So the last item is inventory product details. And this is just another way to kind of further analyze your categories. So again, if I'm looking at tinctures and sublinguals, I want to look at specifically what are my good performers and poor performers, average performers. I can actually select the inventory grade here. I can also filter by brand and vendor and select a date range. But I can see my tinctures, good performers, 9 distinct SKUs make up this specific inventory grade. This is how many sales I've had in the time frame for this inventory grade and average sale per SKU. Over here on the right is going to give a little description, like if you don't want to hop back and forth into that grading matrix, it'll give you an idea of what the AX inventory grade represents and what the recommendations are. It kind of gives a lot more detail as to what recommendations we might have for you when you're in like looking to kind of increase the sales of these good performers. And then down below you have a product details table, how many quantity you have on hand of each of these products, average units per day, how many days you have remaining. So this is again something you could kind of cross-check with a reorder report or with our reorder report so that you can see, okay, if we're running low on some of these good performers, hopefully they're showing up on your reorder report so you can get them back in stock and so they can keep, doing work for you. And then SKU share and sales by inventory, again, by this one specific category. This is kind of redundant information, but it's also available for you here. So that was kind of my short and sweet explanation of this dashboard, but do you have any questions on this one?